Hey everybody, I'm JJ, you're watching Reality Survival. So today I want to talk to you about top 10 wilderness survival tips. The idea behind this video is if you follow these 10 recommendations and you spend time out in the wilderness, say going hiking or going out in your backcountry or someplace that you're not familiar with out in the woods, it will set you up for success and hopefully help to keep you from getting lost, or if you had to stay the night out there or whatever, you would be prepared for it, those kinds of things. Okay, so number one is, and I'm going to list off each thing and then I'll have a little explanation for each one. So number one is take an emergency heading when you're going hiking. So what you want to do with this is you want to take a look at the map and you want to see, this is the path that we're going to go. And then you want to look and say, okay, if anywhere along that path, if we get lost or along that trail, what direction could we walk that would take us straight to a road or an identifiable landmark or something like that? So let's say that a highway runs, over here to the east of the trail that you're parking on or that you're hiking on. And if you just take an emergency heading of 090 from your trail and keep walking in that direction, you'll eventually hit, that highway, whatever it is. That's a great thing to do anytime that you're going in the backwoods. That way, that road's not going to move no matter what. And if you have a compass with you, you can just look and head in that direction and keep walking until you hit it, and you will eventually find your way back. It's a real simple thing to do, but it's something that people forget all the time. Number two is always tell someone your plan, where you're going to go and when you expect to be back. That way, if they don't hear from you, a little while after you're supposed to be back, then they could, contact the sheriff's department or, something along those lines and let them know that you might be lost up there. Number three is always hike with a friend or two. It's actually best if you go with two people, because if a person gets a sprained ankle or something along those lines, it's a lot easier having to help somebody out, that has an injured leg if you've got two people, one on each side. And, sprained ankles are pretty common, especially when you're in rough country and that kind of thing. So having two people with you is the best thing to do. Number four is always carry a day bag or a backpack with your basic survival gear. I've got some videos on that. You guys can take a look at those, just what goes in there. But you're talking about your basic fire building material. You're talking about, a shelter option, some first aid, some food and water, those basic things. Number five is be sure to bring a map and compass and a GPS. Now, map and compass are the main two. Those are the two that you should rely on the most, but you should also, if you have it, then bring a GPS with you. That is really good at helping you identify the fixed point at where you're at. Now, if you're good with triangulation and those kinds of things, and you're in an area that you can triangulate with real identifiable land features and everything, then, you might not need the GPS. But if you're not good at doing that, if you haven't practiced that skill a lot, then having a GPS is helpful. Okay. And make sure you bring extra batteries, because they'll always die when you need them most. If you're traveling across country, if you're not going on an established trail, then it's a really good idea to make sure for every leg of the trip you use a 6-point checklist. Now, a 6-point checklist is where you sit down and you figure out from the point that we start to the next point that we go to, we want to know the heading, the distance, the pace count, a terrain evaluation, what your destination looks like, and what it looks like if you go past that point. You want to have all those 6 things written down on a little note, a little piece of note paper or whatever, so that as you're walking along, going from point to point, you can make sure that you're staying on your path and where you need to be. Okay. Another little tip is when you're navigating through the woods, if you're going just dead reckoning, right through the woods, every time you come to an obstacle, you want to switch sides that you go to. So the first tree or whatever that you come in your way, you want to go to the right. Then when you come to another thing, you go to your left, and then you kind of juke around it, because if you always go to one side, it'll end up throwing you off of course, you know, over time. So just a little tip as far as navigation goes there. And if you guys want a separate video on the 6-point checklist, I could go more in depth with that and, you know, show you on a map or whatever. Just let me know in the comments down below. Number 7 is, and I've got lots of fire starting videos in the past. You guys can check those out if you want. But make sure that you use a platform and brace when you are starting a fire. And basically a platform is taking some bark or some you know, tree branches or wood split in two or something like that, and making a nice platform to set your tinder on. And then a brace is like a forearm sized piece of wood that you can set right there, and then put your tinder right next to it, and that way it allows your tinder to get good air and all that kind of stuff. But again, check out some of those older fire making videos if you want to know more about that. Number 8 is collect natural tinder as you walk. And then, you know, as you're walking along, if you see some cedar bark on a tree that's nice and good and shaggy and kind of hair-like and airy, grab a little bit of that cedar bark off and just stow it in your pocket. Or if you walk past a birch tree, grab some of that, you know, that paper birch and pull that off. Stick that in your pocket. If you find some nice dry grass, you know, that'll even work. You can throw some of that in your pocket. And you can even take, if you go by like a little cedar tree or a juniper tree or something like that, and you see some real good fine twigs, you know, grab just a couple of handfuls of those and stick them in your cargo pocket or whatever. And then when you get to camp, if you got to start a fire, you've already got a bunch of fire making materials right there that's nice and dry and ready to go, and it'll help you build that fire real easy. Okay. Number 9, this is one that's often overlooked. When you're walking on trails and you're going, make sure that you stop and you look back frequently. You want to remember what it looks like behind you, because if you have to turn around and go back the other way, you need to be able to recognize those features and those landmarks and all that kind of stuff from the other side, because it looks different. So that's an important one. If you are in, you know, some kind of a tactical situation or, you know, something like that for whatever crazy reason, then it's also a good idea to do the stop, look, listen, and smell. So, you know, it just depends on the situation that you're in, but every so often, you know, you want to kind of slow down and take a knee and just look and observe the area around you. Listen for what's going on. Sound can travel a long ways in the wilderness, and then smell too. And this really, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a combat situation. This could be in a non-combat situation if you're lost, especially if there's people out there looking for you. You know, it's a real good idea to just travel slow, take breaks every once in a while, and listen, you know, because you might hear some whistles, you might hear some people yelling, you might hear, you know, people that are looking for you and that kind of stuff. So this could really, it could go in combat or non-combat or whatever. Okay, the next one is, now this is, some people might not want to do this. I think it's a pretty good idea, especially if you're going on a long hike. If you're going to be overnight, if you're going to be really deep into the wilderness and that kind of thing where your risk is a little bit higher. If this is just a short day hike, this kind of thing probably is not necessary. But if you're going on a really long hike, I think it's a good idea to leave a note on your dashboard and, you know, give some details on kind of where you're going. You know, we're headed to this trail or to this peak or something along those lines, and we expect to be back, you know, at this time. You can also put on there a radio frequency that you're, like if you bring a GMRS radio or something, you could say we'll listen to the radio on at these times and on this frequency if we had an emergency. And then if you have a spare radio, you could even leave a radio kind of within plain view in the car. That way somebody could break the window, get the radio, and talk to you if they had to. Like I said, that one, some people will be like, well, that presents a problem for people who could break into your car because they know when you're going to be back, and then they could break in. And that might be true, but at the same time, people who are going to break into your car are probably just going to break into your car, and there's probably not anything that's going to, you know, change that. So use your discretion on whether or not you think that's the appropriate thing to do or not. Like I said, I think it would mostly only be really necessary if you were going on a pretty advanced hike, something that was, you know, well into the forest and that kind of stuff. But anyway, those are just 10 tips that I think would be important to help keep you safe if you were traveling in the wilderness kind of setting, if you're going back into the national forest or whatever. And you know, the thing is that there's about 14,000 people per year that end up getting lost and have to use rescue services and that kind of thing here just in the continental United States, in America. So it does happen to people pretty frequently. So take it seriously, do a little bit of preparation, make sure that you got all your stuff squared away, make sure you got your map and compass and you know, first aid kits and all that kind of stuff in there, in your day gear and everything, and you'll probably be fine. But anyhow, if you guys have got other tips, then I would love to hear what they are. Go ahead and stick those in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to live the 6 P's. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.